Did you guys all know that today is World Kindness Day?
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't really feel like the world is a very kind place at the moment, does it? Not really. And I sure don't know, and I don't know if you do, but I need to find a way to cope with all the ugliness. But how are we going to do this? Tonight, we hope to give you some of those tools. And here to introduce our program and amazing speakers is honestly one of the kindest people that I know, Celeste Albert.
Hello, everyone. I'm Celeste Albert, Coordinator of Team Programs at Jewish Family and Children's Service. It is my honor and privilege to introduce tonight's program and speaker. Unpacked is the division of OpenDor Media, who is the leading global media company 21st century with a mission to strengthen the understanding and enduring personal connection of all young Jews and their peers to Judaism, Israel, and the Jewish people, and to address the challenges young Jews face today. From videos, podcasts, films, publishing, social, and email, they create content that today's generation relies on to explore their identity and heritage, to lead more informed and connection to their Jewish lives, strengthening the global Jewish community. Yoni Buckman is the Education Associate at OpenDor Media. He has been instrumental in designing interdisciplinary curricula and spearheading educational initiatives across Jewish organizations and congregations. So now take it away, Yoni.
Thank you so much. Here, I'm just going to share my screen. And if I could get like a thumbs up if that's working, that would be excellent.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. So tonight we're talking about navigating the rise of anti-Semitism. And I know that a lot of you are here in person and some of you are here over Zoom. And so we're going to talk about this both in the online context and also interpersonally in real life, IRL. And we know this topic is huge and that many of you are dealing with anti-Semitism online and in person. We want to create a safe space for you to discuss. And we also want to give you some tools to succeed. And Celeste already gave a great introduction of Unpacked and also me, so I'll just kind of go through this quickly. But Unpacked is an educational media company dedicated to educating, engaging, and entertaining young Jews, connecting you to Israel and Judaism. And today, in the polarized world in which we live, people often view things as black and white. And at Unpacked for Educators, we look at diversity of perspectives, nuance, complexity, and trying to bring that line, two Jews, three opinions, to life. Now, who am I? Again, thank you for the beautiful introduction. My name is Yoni Buckman. I'm the Education Associate. And I have worked over the last 10 years primarily with teens and youth in congregations, in their religious schools, and also in youth movements. And right now in my role, I'm working with middle school students, high school students, college students, and young adults post-college. And the context that we're talking about today is really something that's at the forefront in a lot of people's experiences. And so what we're going to do today is 4 things. We're going to talk about how you identify anti-Semitism online, how you distinguish anti-Semitism from criticism of Israel. We're also going to talk about what you might do when you experience anti-Semitism online or in person. We'll talk about how to be a responsible consumer of media and social media. And we'll also talk about how you can make a difference. I want to just give you a moment to pull out your phones and open up this QR code. This is a Google form that we've created for you so that you can start typing questions. You can think of them as we're going through the first part of this presentation, or you can just open this up on your phone and then save it for the end. But we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and this is going to be how you submit your questions for us to go through. I'm going to leave this up for a second, and then I'm going to switch QR codes on you in a moment. All right, so we'll give this like a 10-second countdown, and then just that you know the next QR code that you see is going to be different. Okay, I hope you got it. That screen will come up again at the end, don't worry. So we kind of want to know from you a little bit about how you use social media. All right, so we have what's called a Mentimeter. This is going to create, it's going to post your responses on a screen. So just be aware of that. We want you to, again, pull out your phone, use the QR code. If you're on Zoom, you can go to menti.com and the code is 86668303. Okay, and I'm going to switch over to here. Let's see if this worked. Oh, it is working. So let me just reshare my screen. This is working great. Here we go. All right, so these are the social media networks apps that you're on. I'm seeing, okay, excellent. Snapchat, Instagram, lots of Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Discord. Nothing, none, awesome. Okay, a lot of people on Instagram. The size of these words is kind of showing us volume. All right, lots of Instagram, lots of Snapchat. All right, I want to ask you another question, which is how many hours a day do you think you spend on social media? And you can be honest, this is anonymous, so you can be completely honest with us. No one knows who's typing anything. Wow. Okay, this is lower. I think I'm on my phone for many more hours than I realize, usually in the evenings. All right, lots of people on for 3 hours, 6 hours. Awesome. All right, I want to switch again. See if I can do this smoothly. There we go. All right, so I just want to show you what other people, what other teens are answering to these questions. So one of the things that we're noticing is that on average, teenagers today are on social media or on their phones for entertainment for on average 8 hours a day. So we saw a lot of 3 hours, a lot of 6 hours. That's a little bit low for what other people are doing. We're seeing around 8 hours a day. Almost everyone is on YouTube. About half are getting their news from YouTube weekly. We're seeing about 2/3 of people on TikTok. And we're seeing a lot of people on Instagram and on Snapchat. So lots of social media use. And these platforms are platforms in which you are going to maybe experience anti-Semitism. So I know I can't see the people in the room, but for those of you who are in the room, I think it's important that you see each other. So if you're in the room in person, I would like you to raise your hand if you've experienced anti-Semitism or if you've witnessed it, if you've seen it on social media. Okay, and I want you to look around the room and see how many hands are up. I can't see you, so I'm just gonna try to, okay, awesome. People on Zoom are clicking the raised hand. You can definitely do that too. All right, now I've led this session in person with other groups before, so I've seen lots of hands up. So I'm just going to visualize that a lot of hands are up, which is both unfortunate and also I'm hoping that it gives you a little bit of a sense of community and that you're not alone in these experiences. So I want to play for you, it's going to be 2 clips from a video that we did about the experience that people have when it comes to anti-Semitism online.
I think where this landscape is starting to shift is really on social media.
I would see my closest friends who I sat with at lunch saying that Zionism was equal to genocide on their stories.
I hate your shirt. Shit. I'm gonna set it on fire. I'm serious.
They would post is that Israel's an apartheid state. Israel is a racist endeavor.
Essentially, hordes of people report my videos under hate speech. They've done this on videos of my cats, videos of me making bread. And then after enough reports are made, TikTok automatically removes the video.
And you have to wonder if these people actually think that they're taking part in freeing Palestine by harassing Jewish activists online.
Now, when there are conflicts in the Middle East, we see that anti-Semitism spikes, right? This clip and the one I'm about to show you are both from a documentary that we did called Unsafe Spaces. And that documentary explores the experience of people typically on college campuses, but people who are finding that they are, because of their Jewish identity, no longer welcome in certain spaces, not necessarily because of the views that they have on Israel, but simply because they are Jewish, and that people are connecting, certain spaces connect anti-Israel sentiment with anti-Semitism. And so I want to show you this one more clip from that documentary.
What's important to recognize is that as much as this hatred is a political threat to Israel, it's also a threat to the very core of who we are, a threat of stigmatizing Jewish identity itself.
People are hiding their Jewish identity more and more.
Seeing, things posted on their peers' Instagram stories about, the Jewish state being this evil, horrible place. Of course it turns them off from wanting to be Jewish or wanting to say that they're Jewish.
I definitely have friends who do not like being public about being Jewish.
I have lost friends because I am a proud Jew.
So what I want to show you are a couple of stats here, some statistics on the current conflict. And this is survey research that was done only a couple of weeks ago, where people were asked in general in this conflict, in the Israel-Hamas war, do you side more with Israel or more on Hamas? And if you just look at the aggregate, if you just look at the total number of people responding to surveys like this, you might have a little bit of optimism, right? We're saying 84% of total people side with Israel over Hamas. However, and I know the font is really little here, so I'm going to tell you what it says. When you break it down by age group, so if you start at the oldest age group surveyed, 65 years old and older, 95% of people, so almost everybody, would say that they are siding more with Israel than Hamas in the current conflict. But as you move down the scale, when you start going younger and younger, we start to see when you get to 35-year-olds to 44-year-olds, only 3/4. When you get to 18 to 24-year-olds, we're basically at a 50-50 split. And this cuts off at the youngest age at 18. So we don't have that survey data for people in high school settings, but if you follow that trend, we're looking at about 50-50 or lower as you get younger, right? A similar kind of picture can be seen when you ask, do you think that the Hamas killing of 1,200 Israeli civilians in Israel on October 7th can be justified by the grievances of Palestinians, or is it not justified? So essentially, is there a justification for the attack on October 7th? And again, you see that 3/4 of people are saying, no, it cannot be justified. 1/4 in total are saying, yes, that attack and all of the brutality that happened on the 7th is justified. However, when you look at it again, based on age, the younger you go, the more it gets split. So that 65 and older, that oldest age group that was surveyed, they say that the attack on October 7th, regardless of the political context, is absolutely not justified. That type of violence is not at all justified, regardless of the situation. As you move younger, you get to 18 to 24-year-olds, we're looking again at that 50-50 split, right? So here it says that 51% of people think that that kind of violence can be justified, and 49% say not. And again, the youngest that these surveys are going are 18. So when we think of high school age students, we're not really sure where they land. So I want to get to those four pieces, right? The first one is, how do we identify anti-Semitism? And I want to show you, again, a couple of clips about this idea of how do you know the difference? How can you tell the difference between legitimate criticism of Israel and when that criticism crosses into anti-Semitism?
Is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic? It's a question that confuses many well-meaning people. Some assume that an attack on the Jewish state must also be an attack on Jews. For instance, evangelical leader Franklin Graham once dubbed criticism of Israeli settlers an assault on God's chosen people. At the same time, others justify their attacks on Jewish people around the world by pointing to Israel's actions, claiming that they are only being anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic.
Sie sind die Feinde der Menschheit. Das System des Zionismus ist das Krebsgeschwür der Menschheit.
So what's the deal? Is criticizing the Jewish state anti-Jewish? Not quite. In fact, it happens all the time in Israel itself and among Jews everywhere. Just as someone can oppose the policies of the United States, France, China, or Saudi Arabia, they can oppose the actions of the Israeli government. Doing so doesn't make them a bigot. Objections to Israeli domestic policies, settlements, occupation, or treatment of the Palestinians are political positions, not anti-Semitic slurs. This is true even when the criticism is harsh, controversial, or makes some people uncomfortable. Israel is a country like any other, and it deserves criticism like any other. If that were the end of the conversation, it would make our lives a lot easier. But unfortunately, it's not. That's because criticism of the Jewish state sometimes masks animosity towards Jews, and as a result, anti-Israel movements often attract anti-Jewish bigots. In many places, it's not respectable to openly hate Jews, but it is respectable to criticize the Jewish state, and so bigots will say their problem is with Israel when their real problem is with Jews. What does this look like in practice? First, there's the obvious stuff. Around the world, anti-Semites assault Jews and vandalize Jewish schools, synagogues, campus institutions, and even Holocaust memorials over alleged Israeli actions thousands of miles away.
When this began, mid-May, in Gaza and Israel, anti-Semitic incidents in the US spiked. Jewish diners attacked in Los Angeles when a pro-Palestinian motorcade stopped, men got out and
started running toward the tables and asking indiscriminately who's Jewish.
This is just the usual harassment and violence that Jews have experienced for centuries. Israel is simply the flimsy cover story that perpetrators of these crimes invoke to justify their classically anti-Semitic actions. Then you have traditional anti-Semitic lies that are repurposed as anti-Israel lies. For example, back in the Middle Ages, Jews were repeatedly accused of murdering Gentile children for perverse purposes. Some anti-Semites still make this bizarre medieval accusation known as the blood libel today. But others have adapted it for the 21st century, with some twisting it into the claim that Israel is perpetrating genocide against the Palestinian people.
So we want to just highlight a few of those key points, right? The first one is that criticism of Israel is not automatically anti-Semitic, right? I hold views on Israel that are critical of the Israeli government. That's always been the case, in the same way that I have political views that are critical of the American government. I have family who live in Israel, and they also share criticism of Israeli policies. And so criticism inherently is not anti-Semitic. However, often we see anti-Jewish prejudice disguising itself as anti-Israel critique. And so we see some of those anti-Semitic tropes getting repackaged as simply criticism of Israel. And so it's an important thing when identifying that line, that distinction between anti-Israel criticism and anti-Semitism, is to ask, have I heard this before in a slightly different way? And another thing to consider is the question of, is Israel being held to a double standard, right? Is Israel being treated differently than other countries? And so when we think of the types of things that people are critical of Israel, the things that they point to, there's a question that often needs to be asked: are you leveling the same critique against other countries that are doing similar things, right? So for instance, I've been hearing a lot right now critique on how far right the current Israeli government is, right? To come up in a conflict, right? When a war breaks out in America or somewhere else, when there's a terrorist attack in another country, I don't typically hear people starting to talk about the political leaning of that country, especially a democratic country. And so it's something for us to think about is, is this criticism only levied against Israel or others? So another question that we want to talk about today is, what should I do when I see anti-Semitism online? And we have a few different strategies. It's not going to be the same for every single person, but we just want to offer you a menu of suggestions of ways to respond. So one thing that's always important to ask when you see anti-Semitism online, especially on social media, is to ask yourself, is the person that I am engaging with, are they speaking in good faith? There are a lot of people that are simply commenting or posting slogans, right? A one-sentence concept they're not necessarily having thoughtful dialogue. But every once in a while, there's an opportunity where we'll see someone who, either because of the thoughtfulness of their post, or if you followed their page and all of a sudden you see this kind of out of the blue shift, you might ask yourself, maybe this person will be receptive. We'll give you one example of someone on our staff who is a big NBA, a big basketball fan. They were following an Instagram page about the NBA. And a few years ago, Kyrie Irving, a very famous basketball player, made some anti-Semitic comments. And this Instagram page, that was just an NBA fan page, reposted what he had said. And so someone on our staff looked at that and said, you know, they don't really post political comments. They're just kind of a fan page. And so he wrote to the page. He just sent them a DM and he said, you know, I've been a fan of you for a really long time. I noticed that you don't typically make political statements. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but what Kyrie Irving said is anti-Semitic. And as a Jewish fan of yours, it really hurt to see you repost it. The person managing the page wrote back and said, I'm so sorry, I had no idea, and took it down, right? So every once in a while, there will be an opportunity where you can do something and have an effect, but that question of will the person be receptive, are they operating in good faith, is a really critical question to ask. Another thing that you can do is, if you know the person, take that conversation offline. If it's a friend of yours, if it's someone in your community, if it's someone who you have a two-way conversation with already, we would recommend that you have a conversation with them in person, ideally, or at least just out of the comment section, right? It is a very dehumanizing experience trying to engage with someone online. And so if you can listen to a person's voice, if they can hear yours, if you can have a good conversation in person, that is preferable over debating someone in the comment section. And another tip is not responding in the heat of the moment. Social media moves really, really fast. And we all get, especially at Unpacked, we create social media content. We are creators. And so we know you are rewarded for being fast. And we often see from other people, they're rewarded for being fast and not necessarily rewarded for being thoughtful. So it's really important when we post on our social media platforms, we try to be really thoughtful. Sometimes that means that we miss the moment. It does happen. Sometimes it means, wow, someone said something and it deserves a thoughtful response. And right now we're just like so angry, or we're so thrown off by them. We pause and then post. So not responding in the heat of the moment is usually a good approach. I want to show you Yirmiyahu, who, if you watch our videos, you'll probably recognize him. He has a few personal thoughts also on how to respond when you see anti-Semitism online.
So anybody who's publicly Jewish on social media is very familiar with anti-Semitic trolls. And if you spend all your time responding to trolls, then you probably would have a full-time job just doing that. But you need to distinguish between an opportunity to teach others, because you're never going to be able to educate the people that are trolling, or hardly. But what you can do is utilize comments, questions, things that come from a place of ignorance to educate the people that might be reading the comment section. So that's my general approach to it. But different people have different ways to address it. Some people just think it's, you shouldn't respond to anybody. I think that you need to be selective and see how you can sometimes turn a vicious comment or, an ignorant statement into a teachable moment.
So another question that we have is, how do you become a responsible consumer of media or of social media? And so we do have a few suggestions.
After news broke of Hamas's invasion of Israel, many of us rushed to social media. But the 24/7 pace of Twitter, TikTok, and Meta is both a blessing and a curse. And in the rush to be the first responder, give a take, so many accounts end up spreading misinformation. So how can we keep ourselves updated and informed without going completely insane? We've put together 9 do's and don'ts for using social media during times of crisis. Let's start with the do's. Number 1, follow reputable accounts.
I've got a hot story here.
Reputable journalists verify and fact-check information before they post it. They don't sacrifice accuracy for speed. They don't embellish for the sake of posting the hottest take. And they don't use the facts to score political points.
Read all about it.
Where possible, follow reputable mainstream outlets and journalists who have a documented track record of good reporting and who cite their sources and evidence. Number 2, verify your facts. Before you post, ask yourself, has this been confirmed by reputable sources? And also, how long ago did this happen? Yes, we all want the latest breaking news. Some of us like to be the first one out of the gates. But slow down. A lot of this breaking news is later revealed to be inaccurate. Be wary of reposting claims made during or in the immediate aftermath of a crisis. It's okay to take a beat, to wait for verification before posting. Number 3, clean your feed. At the time of this recording, we're in the middle of a war that could drag for months. Take care of yourself. You don't need to expose yourself to the trolls, the bots, the anti-Semites, the neo-Nazis that come to poison the internet. Use the block button liberally. You don't gain anything by exposing yourself to a constant stream of hatred. The same is true for accounts posting gruesome clips and images. You do not have to watch these. You do not have to share them. It doesn't help anyone if you're terrorized and traumatized yourself. There's a clear difference between accounts that share verified information for the purpose of educating others and accounts that act as Hamas mouthpieces and amplify their brutal propaganda. Number 4, educate others. So you have a social media following and you want to help. Amazing! This is an opportunity to use your platform for good, no matter how big or small that platform is. If you manage to change even one mind, you're doing holy work. Now is the time to amplify reputable voices. Now is the time to share educational resources from organizations you trust. We've included a list of those in the description. Now is the time to give the world the real picture of what's going on in Israel. Don't forget to share the good news too, the stories of unity and love.
We need to show the world they're not breaking us down. They're not breaking us in any way.
Counter the false narrative that Israelis are terrified and broken always. It's simply untrue. Some are, some of the time of course, but Israelis are also so joyful and have such an amazing sense of humor. The world needs to know that despite the trauma, the Jewish people are stronger and more united than ever.
So I'm just going to quickly recap some of those things, right? Ask yourself, when you see something posted on social media or in the media, is it a reputable source? Is it trustworthy? Is it telling the whole story? Is it giving more context? And then we also just want you to know that it's always okay to take a break. It's okay to block or unfollow someone. It's okay. You don't have to look at everything. I know that I've fallen into this where I will scroll on Instagram and there will be a blurred out image or there will be a warning that says sensitive content. And I know that I should scroll and I click on it and watch it anyway, and then I regret it. You don't have a responsibility to watch these things. You absolutely can scroll past it. You can take a break. It's not just an issue on social media when it comes to fact checking and being trustworthy. This is one example of a story where we see the New York Times was changing its headlines. The BBC was for a long time unclear or inaccurate when it was reporting on a Gaza hospital, an explosion outside of a Gaza hospital. It started with people saying, oh, Israel bombed that hospital. Then it moved to a little bit less clarity. It was a little bit more ambiguous. And then finally, it takes a little bit of time to investigate what happens, but pretty quickly it became obvious that Israel did not, in fact, bomb that hospital. And it was an explosion from a misfired missile from Palestinian Islamic Jihad. That is an example of how even your trustworthy sources can get stories wrong, and it's important not to be super fast on it. So I want you to think for a moment on which of these suggestions, recommendations, tips resonated with you. And I also want you to share with us now, go back to that Mentimeter, right? What's another best practice on social media that you would like to share with others, that you would like to share with the group? And this can be a great opportunity for you to share your wisdom with your peers, with your friends. I'm going to switch over to that Mentimeter slide. I might have done that. Here we go. Okay, here we are. Now it should be open to responses. A best practice on social media that you would like to share with your peers. Now, I might have messed this up, and that's okay. We can get to that part in the Q&A. You can share that. So I'm going to go back to the slide deck, and we're just going to go forward into some of those actionable steps of how you can make a difference. So the first thing that you can do is to educate yourself, right? We provide a lot of resources giving you more context, more history on what's going on right now. Educating yourself is a really wonderful way of making a difference, and also then using your platform to educate others. So you might have a small platform or a large platform, but talk with your friends, share things within your circle, share videos, podcasts, and resources, things that can help other people get informed and educated on what's happening. And then also, we think it's really important to share positive content. There is wonderful, wonderful unity that is happening right now in Israel and globally. There are beautiful stories of heroism, of inspiration, of fun. And we want you to know that sharing those positive stories is a really effective thing that you can do. So on our Instagram page, we make sure every day to post a nice short clip just to give you a little bit of a mood boost. And here's one example.
Are you ready for a moment of strength? Let's go. Here's your daily dose of inspiration to raise your spirit. Even in the wake of the deadliest atrocity in Israel's history, the Jewish people and the state of Israel continue to live. A baby born in southern Israel following the tragic massacre at Kibbutz Be'eri was named Be'eri. Couples who needed to postpone their weddings due to being called up to reserve duty still got married. On their bases, soldiers on the front lines have participated in life cycle events from their phones, like this one, who joined his son's Brit Milah from afar. Soldiers have sang songs welcoming Shabbat to their wives. Israelis have gathered on their balconies to sing songs of unity and support, drowning out the sorrow for moments of solidarity and resolve. The Jewish people continue to live. Am Yisrael Chai.
And so an idea that I want to leave you with is this quote from Pirkei Avot, which says that it's not your job to finish the work. You're not obligated to complete the work, but you're also not free to desist from it. So anti-Semitism, we're not going to solve it. We're not going to solve it right now. We're not going to solve it in our lifetimes. It's so big. It's been going on for so long. It's so persistent. It morphs, it evolves. And just because it's a problem that we're not going to be able to solve doesn't mean that we shouldn't still work to create a better world. I'm going to skip this for a second. I just want you to know that you can follow us on YouTube, on our Unpacked channel, on our Today Unpacked channel, which is more of a current events channel. And you can also find us on TikTok, on Instagram at Jewish Unpacked. And we also have podcasts that teach about Israeli history. I've been finding that one of our podcasts called Soulful Jewish Living has been incredibly helpful for me. It's a Jewish mindfulness and spirituality podcast, and it talks about how we're processing what's going on. So educate yourself, support yourself, watch those feel-good stories, and make sure that you have those tools to take care of yourself and to connect with community. And so here, I want to give you that QR code again to submit your Q&A questions. This is that Google form. If you had it open from the beginning, I hope that you had time or are taking time to ask questions. And yeah, I'm going to leave this up for a second, and then I'm going to switch over to, so make sure that you've grabbed that QR code, and I'm just going to look over and start reading through what we've submitted. So I'm going to stop sharing in 10 seconds. Okay. So now I'm going to try to find, there we go. Okay, I see great questions coming in. Ooh, okay. A question that we have is, what advice would you give to 11th and 12th graders who are deciding where to go to college? This is something that we've been talking a lot about. We've been speaking to different college campuses, trying to give support. First and foremost, it's really important that wherever you are, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, post-college, to connect yourself with community, right? Make sure that you are building those relationships with your family, with your friends, with your peers, so that you're not alone wherever it is that you go. We did write an article where we had asked a bunch of people on college campuses. We had asked them questions like, what are you seeing? How do you feel? And there are certain campuses where students are feeling very scared, and that is something I would say to consider. College is not just about, like the US World News ranking, right? It's not just about trying to quantify that experience and, what programs they offer. There are a lot of pieces of choosing where you go to college, right? There's the geography of it, there's the size of the school. And what I would say is definitely keep in mind how you're going to feel in that campus. You can look at, if you see things in the news, and maybe it should, or maybe it can help inform that decision. But, you're deciding between a million different things when it comes to going to college. And so that's something that I would say to take seriously, to see what you have there. What advice would I give students whose teachers are posting pro-Palestinian content? First of all, I would say if it's just pro-Palestinian content, right? Pro-Palestinian content doesn't necessarily, that can be wonderful content. What I would say, if they're posting anti-Israel content, or if they're posting content that you view as anti-Semitic, you have a relationship with that teacher, and that would be a time to reach out to them and to help educate them, so that you're not just taking in what they're saying, that you're giving them resources. We have our Unpacked for Educators website, gives educators opportunities there, but it can be really hard when someone that you look up to, a role model, is sharing content that is hurtful. And so that's also where I would say, make sure that you're connecting with community. Okay, I'm just looking through, there's so many great questions here. How do we speak to people who aren't Jewish, right? How do I offer presentations on anti-Semitism at public schools, things like that? It's a great question. A lot of our content is meant for a broad audience. We're posting on YouTube. Our podcasts are available for anyone to access. And so in terms of the messaging, it's education, right? So it's really important for people to know what those differences are between, when they're crossing the line from making a political statement that might be legitimate to making an anti-Semitic statement. And again, we go back to personal relationships, right? If you're in a school, if Jews have allies, we're seeing this across the world. We're seeing it in the US. We're seeing it on campuses, in schools. We are not alone. It can feel very lonely at times, but we are not alone. And that's a really important thing, that when we speak in larger, non-primarily Jewish audiences and environments, there is a lot of love. There is a lot of support there. Sometimes people just don't know. They say, I love this person and they're Jewish and I want to help them and I don't know how. And that's where that education piece comes in. All right, I'm going to do one more question if that's okay. Right, what do you do, right, when your school doesn't even mention the conflict or doesn't cover it well? So this is something that we are working on at Unpacked for Educators. Other organizations are working on trying to make connections with schools that are either implicitly or explicitly not speaking about the war between Israel and Hamas. What I would say is, if you are connected to a school and you see that they're not talking about it, or that's something that you're struggling with, it's possible that they're not talking about it because they don't know how. And a lot of the content that's out there in the world can be very one-sided, which from an educational perspective is problematic. And so the content that we put out at Unpacked is educational in nature. It is complex, it's nuanced. We really value diversity of perspectives. And so you can connect them with us, you can share our content with them, and show them that these are educators who are creating content on the conflict, and let them listen to those podcasts, let them watch those videos, let them consume some of what we do. And we get a lot of positive feedback from educators who might not agree with our Zionist perspective, which we do have. We are a Zionist organization, but there's an educational legitimacy in what we're putting out. There's a lot of validity in what we're doing, and educators tend to see that. So that would be something that I would offer.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Yoni. So before we move on to the next portion, let's give a round of applause to Yoni Buckman. Thank you so much for speaking with our community. I now would like to introduce Claire Brown, who's an LCSW, who will be discussing some coping mechanisms on how to deal with the rise of anti-Semitism.
Hi, sorry, I'm Claire Brown. I used to be a clinician at Jewish Family and Children's Service, and now I work in private practice, and I work with a lot of adolescents, college students, grad students, and then just other people in the community. And a number of my clients are Jewish. And so I kind of, I wrote this on a piece of paper, which I hopefully forgot at home. So sorry for reading off of my phone. But so first, I kind of wanted to say, like, whatever you guys, all of you, of whatever ages you are experiencing, you're not alone in this. I mean, most of the people I work with who are Jewish are experiencing a lot of very strong feelings right now, and some of them might be very conflicting with the way that you have viewed the world before October 7th. So please realize that you are going through a hard time. It's okay to feel really bad right now sometimes, and hopefully not all the time. I was curious, like, how many of you have discovered that your schools have not mentioned anti-Semitism or the war at all? Okay. And I would raise my hand for the Princeton Public Schools. Good job, guys. I think it's really hard to feel like, this isn't exactly a mental health strategy, but this is what I have noticed, what I've heard from my own kids who are in 6th grade and 9th grade in Princeton schools, is that there's basically, like, we're just being white oppressors now, and we are not given any kind of protected minority status. And it's really hard to square that with the anti-Semitism, all the hatred that we're feeling towards our community. And so if you are feeling very conflicted about this, you always thought you were a pretty open-minded person, and now you're not wrong. That is how it feels, and that's okay. Are a lot of you, like, raise your hand if you're feeling anger off and on in these times? I am. All right, it's okay. We're allowed to feel angry. But I would say sometimes we have to look at what we call in my line of work, the sort of secondary emotions. And if you guys don't want to call stuff out, that's totally fine. I'm happy to say it. But what do you think might be some of the emotions underlying the anger? Yeah. Like sadness. Absolutely. Sadness, upset. Yep. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah. A lot of frustration. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah, fear, a lot of fear. And also, like, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm really disappointed right now in pretty much a lot of people from the 2 cohorts that are right above you guys in age. I'm like, really? This is what you're doing? Okay. So I think that, like, when we experience all these different kind of conflicting emotions, it's just really difficult, and it's hard to know how to respond. So I think, one thing that's not great to do is to kind of just let yourself spiral in social media, because I don't even really know if there's words for it. One day, right after October 7th, when the first of what I like to often think of, and I know they're not all pro-Hamas marches started, especially on college campuses, I just typed in, like, Israel into my Instagram search, and I felt like I had, like, pulled back a curtain on something that I didn't want to acknowledge was there. I wanted to pretend it wasn't there, and it terrified me. And I was like, okay, we're good. I'll go back to my regularly scheduled cupcake decorating and, like, absurdist humor memes, because I can't handle this. And so that doesn't mean I listen to myself. I continue to look at stuff, but I didn't look at it that way. If it came across my social media, I looked at it, but I didn't go down, like, all the different rabbit holes. So I think one of the things I'd recommend as a coping strategy is try not to do that. It will only make you feel worse than you already feel. Does anyone think they could possibly do that? I mean, I'm not going to raise my hand because I'm guilty of it every day. But if you can limit that and just kind of draw some lines, and that's for everybody, whatever age group you are. Another thing that can be really helpful is just, like, get together with friends who understand the place that you're in. It doesn't matter that our non-Jewish friends are supportive, wonderful people. Sometimes we just need to, like, vent to somebody who viscerally gets it, like right here and right here. So I mean, do that, but then also have fun. Don't just spend the whole time, as I sometimes do with some of my Jewish friends, just bemoaning the state of the world and how horrible it is. Like, we also have to go out and whatever it is you guys do for fun, remember to do it. And then I was also thinking, like, how many of you guys feel kind of powerless and helpless right now against what's happening? I do too. So what do you think might be a few things you could do to kind of counteract that in some way and make yourself feel a little empowered? Yeah, I know it's hard, right? Well, I guess one thing I would say is what I'm doing right now, which is volunteering. So that's one way that you can make some kind of positive change in your community for whatever it is. Like, if you're in a position to donate to the, I don't know, the Friends of the IDF, if that's what floats your boat, then like do that. Sometimes they have double your match and then you feel even better. And I know that in Gesher Lakesher, you do a lot of that kind of stuff. So you yourself may not have a credit card and be able to do it, but as a group, you can pull together or talk to your parents about it. I think that whatever it is in your community you can do to help, whether it's collecting supplies or, I don't know, getting groups of people together to, I don't really know. What do you guys think you could do in your community? I know for me, like talking like this, I'm going to be running some support groups online for people in the younger demographics, so you don't have to have yet another outside of the house extracurricular activity. And for adults, daytime, maybe in person, maybe virtually. I mean, that's about the best I can do, given that I have a full-time practice and a family. Is there anything else anyone can think of?
So I have to shout out some of the students here that are leaders in high school, and I'm just blown away by what I'm seeing in terms of collections and getting other students involved, bringing awareness, bringing speakers into the school. I think that's a very powerful education tool that we sometimes don't think about, because sometimes people just don't know the full extent of what is going on. But to bring an educated speaker, a rabbi, I think can be a really great way to bring awareness and have, facts that are, dependable and reliable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, so there's like lots of things that we can do. And I mean, heck, if you like martial arts, you could take a Krav Maga class and that'll really help you feel more empowered. And I think, too, for anyone who is into it, any kind of mindfulness practice you can do now. It does not mean sitting and meditating in silence. If that's your thing, and I like to do it, go for it. If you like yoga, that's great mindfulness. If you want to just take like a mindfulness walk and look at the beautiful fall colors that are still around and kind of just notice what's in the present moment. Because in this moment, here we are all together, and that's like a really beautiful thing. And I think if we can remember sometimes to pull ourselves back to the present moment, that can be one of the most important coping mechanisms of all, because it can be pretty scary what goes on in your head when you're worrying about this, and even worse on social media. And then you put those two together and it's awful. But if you just bring yourself back to what's going on now, right around you, it's I think a really great way to cope. So that's all I've got. Does anyone have any questions, like mental health wise, that they want to ask? Oh yes, of course. So I'm going to do a support group for adults. We haven't quite figured out, and there's going to be registration for it where you can say whether you want to do it in person or online, and we'll kind of collate those responses. So what for that's going to be Mondays from 11:30 to 12:30. If it is in person, it'll be at JFCS. And then the online one is going to be 7 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday evenings on Zoom. And you, if there's papers over there with the QR, do they have a QR code? On the, yes, so you can, if you're here, you want to take a picture, register, you can do that. If you're online now, it's on the website? Question mark? Yes. Okay. So you can register that way. And like any support group, we're all there to talk. I'm going to be a leader in so much as I like launch the Zoom, and I'll bring things back if they kind of start to look like they might go off the rails, but I'm not there to like tell you what to do or what to think. You're there to kind of just share what you're thinking. We'll probably begin or end with some kind of exercise just to kind of bring us together and as a closing thing. But, you know, support groups are what you make of them. So I hope we can make these really work.
I had a question.
Yeah.
What are some signs that somebody might be needing to talk about this, or how do you know that you might need additional support? Whether it's a support group or talking to somebody, like what does that look like?
I think sort of any of the kind of classic symptoms of anxiety and depression, like changes in your sleeping, you're having trouble falling asleep, or you just kind of want to stay in bed all day and not just because it's cold outside. Changes in appetite, loss of motivation, irritability, you know, sadness and crying, drawing back from your usual activities, not socializing. Those are sort of the main of the kind of depression ones. And as far as anxiety goes, you know, kind of just constant worrying, maybe ruminating over things, probably sleep. You might feel anxiety in your stomach or in your chest, like kind of a tight feeling, or even in your throat. Some people get headaches and they're like, why am I having a headache? And it's because you're anxious and things are kind of just falling by the wayside. It may just be that you're not drinking water because you're just too preoccupied to remember. So you have a dehydration headache, but it's all part of the same sort of thing. I think, you know, and especially for all of these, if you find yourselves snapping at your loved ones more than usual, that's always a great sign of certainly anxiety and definitely depression too. Everybody thinks depression is about sadness, but it's also often about anger. So I think that kind of pretty much covers it. Okay. Thank you, guys.
All right, so I want to thank Claire Brown and Unpacked, and obviously all of you for joining us tonight. I hope that you walk away with some tools that'll help you get through this, you know, unprecedented time. We know that it's difficult for everybody and everybody is struggling. So if you think that people aren't, you're wrong, because everybody is dealing with lots of things that are happening right now. Just so that you know, so JFCS is always here for you. You all know that Celeste is always here for you as well. We will be having groups if anybody wants to join us for a little bit of support. But what the most important thing of all of this is, be kind to yourselves, right? Take care of yourself, take those breaks that you need, put down your phone, walk away from social media, go outside, enjoy the sunshine. It's not easy, but honestly, everybody will get through it and we'll get through it together. So I thank everybody for coming and for being a part of this program. If you have any questions, want any more answers about anything, Unpacked is a fantastic resource. Educate yourself. That really is the best tool. Educate yourself, educate yourself, educate yourself. Stop looking at the horrors that you're seeing and learn about what's really going on so you can be an ally and talk to everybody. So again, thank you guys all for coming. And we will all get through this together.